If I told you that the survival of every living thing you know, every city, every family, every dream, once depended on the judgment of a single man in a single room in the dead of night, you might not believe me, but it's true. And what's even more chilling is that no one outside that room even knew it was happening. The story you're about to hear is not science fiction. It's not speculation. It's a real, documented chain of events, 72 hours, in which the Earth stood on the edge of nuclear winter. This is the story of the closest we have ever come to the end of history, and it is the story of how we survived. Not through power or strategy, but through something much more human: hesitation. The year is 1983, the year when the Cold War stopped being cold. Across the world, the two superpowers are locked in a terrifying dance. The United States has just announced a new missile defense system, one that could make Soviet nuclear weapons useless, something Moscow sees as a prelude to war. In Europe, NATO forces are practicing massive war games, simulating a nuclear exchange so realistically that Soviet intelligence begins to panic. And just weeks before our story begins, a Korean air passenger plane strays off course and is shot down by a Soviet fighter jet. 269 people are dead. Tensions are not just high, they are boiling. In this moment, the smallest spark could ignite the unthinkable. Deep inside a top-secret bunker near Moscow, an officer named Stanislav Petrov is on duty. It's the night shift, September 26th, just past midnight. Petrov is 44 years old, tall, with sharp cheekbones and a tired face. He is trained to follow protocol, but he is also, crucially, trained as an engineer, someone who understands the systems he is watching. And tonight, those systems come alive. Siren wails fill the control room. The big screen flashes a single word in crimson red: launch. 1 missile, then 2, then 5. 5 nuclear missiles have just been fired from the United States, heading for the Soviet Union. Petrov's pulse quickens. The room erupts in shouting. Telephones ring. Every second matters. Protocol says he must immediately report the attack to his superiors, which would almost certainly trigger a retaliatory strike. But Petrov hesitates. Something about this feels wrong. If the United States really wanted to start a nuclear war, why launch just 5 missiles? Why not everything at once? Petrov waits. Seconds stretch like hours. His crew is staring at him, some sweating, some pale, waiting for his order. And then silence. The missiles never arrive. It was a false alarm. Later, it would be discovered that the satellite warning system had been fooled by a rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds. The system saw those reflections as missile plumes. Had Petrov followed protocol, the Soviet leadership might have unleashed thousands of warheads in retaliation, destroying every major American city and triggering a counterstrike that would have wiped the USSR off the map. Billions would have died. The planet's climate would have collapsed into nuclear winter. But because one man doubted a machine, the world survived the first hour of this crisis. But the crisis was far from over. What many don't realize is that Petrov's decision didn't resolve the tension, it intensified it, because now Soviet high command was convinced that the United States might be probing their defenses, testing their readiness before launching a real strike. For the next 72 hours, the entire Soviet nuclear apparatus was on hair trigger alert. Bomber crews slept in cockpits. Missile operators stood with keys in their locks, ready to launch within minutes. Submarines moved into firing position under the Arctic ice. Petrov himself was interrogated, questioned about his judgment. He had technically violated orders by not reporting the launch as real. The stress pushed him to the brink of collapse. And as the Soviets braced for war, NATO was about to begin its largest and most realistic war exercise yet, Able Archer 83. Able Archer was designed as a simulation, a kind of rehearsal for nuclear war. But to Soviet intelligence, it looked exactly like the real thing. Encrypted messages were sent, leaders were moved to secure locations. Everything looked like the opening moves of a first strike. And so, during those 72 hours, Soviet commanders prepared for a preemptive strike of their own. Several times, radar operators thought they were seeing real attacks. NATO aircraft on the move, strange blips over the North Sea, unusual activity in West Germany. Each time, they almost launched. In one chilling incident, a Soviet radar station mistook a Norwegian weather rocket for a nuclear missile. For several minutes, commanders debated launching an all-out retaliation. They stood down at the last second. What makes these 72 hours so haunting is how close we came again and again to total annihilation. This was not one heroic moment. It was dozens of moments. Radar screens, phone calls, whispered arguments in war rooms, where human beings overruled the machines, where fear was outweighed by doubt. And the scariest part is that almost no one knew it was happening. Even in Washington, most leaders had no idea that the Soviets were so close to launching. The war game continued, oblivious to the panic it was causing on the other side. Historians now believe 1983 was the most dangerous year of the Cold War, even more dangerous than the Cuban Missile Crisis. And yet, it was a year of near silence. The public never knew how close we came. Petrov's story didn't become public until the 1990s. By then, he was a forgotten man, living in a small apartment outside Moscow, quietly growing old. He was never awarded a medal, never promoted. He lived out the rest of his life in relative obscurity, dying in 2017. But if you're listening to this, you are part of his legacy, because every moment you have lived since 1983 exists because someone hesitated, because someone was brave enough to say no, to disobey a system that told him to press the button. And as we tell the story, we have to ask ourselves, what would happen if it happened again? Today, the world's nuclear arsenals are still on alert, but now the systems are faster, more automated. The window for human hesitation is shrinking. If the alarms go off tonight, will there be another Petrov in the room? Will someone take the risk of waiting, of doubting, of trusting their instinct over the machine? Or will we let the machines decide for us? The 72 hours that saved the Earth are not just history. They're a warning, because one day we might not get 72 hours. We might get 7 minutes or 7 seconds. And when that moment comes, we will find out whether we have learned anything from the night Stanislav Petrov saved the world. This is not just a story about the past. It's about right now. The choices we still have, the risks we still live with, the thin line between everything we know and nothing at all. Remember those 72 hours, because one day they might be all we have.